So we've been talking a lot about the application of behavioral science, and now we want to think a little bit about how to successfully infuse behavioral science knowledge into organizations. So how do you take that knowledge and methods and build them into your organization? So we're going to speak to some other experts today. We're very happy to welcome to this roundtable Kristen Berman, who's the founder and CEO of Irrational Labs. Kristen's joining us from California, I believe, today. Matt Wallert, who's the founder of Behavioral Science in Organizations. You may recognize it as BeSci.io. And the ex-director of Behavioral Science at Microsoft and Clover Health. And he's the author of Start at the End. And my colleague Etienne Bressou, who you've met earlier today. He's our Chief Behavioral Officer at the BVA Group and CEO of our BVA Nudge Consulting team here in France. And he is the author of Nudge and Other Interventions for Better Learning. So, Etienne, join us, and Eric for our moderator.
And the moderator
will to introduce our moderator.
Your second mistake of the day. I'm happy. One is not enough. So Stéphane Marcel, who is our Chief Growth Officer for the BVA family and a big fan and expert of behavioral science, will be the moderator of this roundtable. Very interesting.
Thank you. Hello, Etienne. You are close.
Hello, Stéphane.
Hi, Kristen. Hi, Matt. Very happy to be with you today to introduce and moderate this, I would say, important topic for us, and I hope for all of you in the audience. Before we go into the topic, I have three simple, I hope, questions for each one. Because it may be obvious that for us and for our audience, that to have maximum impact, to perform, and to build a competitive advantage, behavioral sciences has to be infused into the heart of any organization. But to emphasize this point, I have one question to Kristen first. Kristen, imagine you are in an elevator with the CEO of an organization. He tells you that data and AI are the biggest and best levers to transform organization today. What would you say to him?
Great question, and hello. So I would tend to agree. I think we're living in a really cool time, actually, that AI is coming to change a lot of how we do our work and how we solve our current problems. So I'm personally very excited for this world, and I think I'm in the Bay, and so everyone is kind of working on something that's AI now. So that's some of my context. And of course, you know, we would talk about things in this elevator with the CEO about how it's still important to focus on the behavior we want to change and the customer problem. And it's very easy to get distracted by cool tech and shiny objects. And yet it's, you know, a lot of tech does unlock problem solving. So I think in the financial management world, you can very clearly see a world where you know, we're not doing these, you know, Mint or other kind of PFMs anymore. We're doing an AI agent assistant, and you can ask how much money you have to spend today. And that will make it wildly easy for people to stay within their budget. You know, how we do healthcare will change. We'll be talking to AI agents as doctors, and that will make access across, you know, different rural environments easier and faster. And personally excited for just like admin to be a bit easier, like paying parking tickets. You could automatically pay these things. So I think a lot of the how in our world will change, and that's quite exciting. And I think from a behavioral science point of view, AI will make things easier. And that's, I think, one of the cult things that we believe as behavioral scientists, that when things get easier, more people may do them.
Thank you. Fortunately, it's a high building. You have plenty of things to say.
Exactly, yeah.
Matt, not in the same elevator, perhaps you meet with the human resource director. He explained to you that his company doesn't have this culture of human behavior. They don't need it. What would you say to him?
First, I want to know why all these executives are male, first of all. What is wrong with these elevators? I think, so when I try to talk to people about behavioral science, I try and take it in that order: behavior first, science second. So I always start from a place of curiosity. If he doesn't think he's changing behavior, what does he think he's doing? So, you know, tell me about some of the things you did today. I'd get him to sort of articulate his day and then say, well, oh, okay, when you took that meeting, why'd you take that meeting? What was the point of that meeting? And I'd help him try and see that actually we're all already doing behavior change, right? This is not the new part of behavioral science. Everybody's doing behavior change all the time. It's putting that at the forefront, recognizing that the things that we're doing are behavior changing in nature. That is the change that I want him to make. And so if I can get him to make that change, then I can say, well, if you're already doing it, right, but you're doing it without being conscious of the fact that you're doing it and probably somewhat randomly, why don't we use this marvelous tool that is science, right? Science is this beautiful thing that we've created, this beautiful process that has helped humans advance. So if we believe that science is a process that tends to result in better outcomes than just, our own set of biases, then, well, if I can help you recognize you're already changing behavior and I can offer you a tool that you're familiar with that has good replicable outcomes, that's a good way to get people along the behavioral science journey.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry for you, Etienne. There is no space left into the elevator. Too many people here. So imagine you're in a conference and someone tells you that behavioral sciences or nudge are just a trend, a buzzword. How do you respond?
Well, first I'm does that work? Yeah. First, I'm happy to be in a conference because I will have more time than in an elevator, which is not fair with Christian and Matt, but that's life. My main point would be to say, by the way, that yes, nudge has been a buzzword, and in somehow that's fine, because that has been a way to discover behavioral science, psychology, neuroscience, and all that kind of decision science. And to put them in the spotlight. So if a buzzword can help to put science on the spotlight, and to make behavioral science more often used by organizations, whether they are public or private, I think that's a good thing. And by the way, at the end of the day, I would add that when my government, the French government, is spending millions of euros to try to build behavioral intervention, I think it's not a buzzword anymore, but it's a hard trend, definitely.
Thank you, Etienne. So, are we going to become a bit serious now? Oh, we were serious, but let's try to go deeper into our topic, and especially based on your experience, because you are lucky. You are not only thinkers or academics, you are doers or advisors. So you have plenty of experiences in different contexts, I would say. Christian, you're going to start first another time. You have worked with a lot of successful tech companies and big names. What things, if any, are specific to this culture or sector? And did you use the same method to infuse behavioral sciences in each tech company you've worked with? It's a long question, sorry.
No, good question. So yes, our team, Irrational Labs, we've worked kind of across the board from the big folks at Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, to a lot of like health techs and fintechs to infuse behavioral science into their teams. And this is from doing consulting engagements where we're launching something end to end, and this is through setting up some behavioral science organizations. And my sense is that a lot of the kind of tech or maybe people say digital world is really designed around the funnel. And so it's getting people from, which is behavioral science aligned, it's getting people from one place to another place. And you have teams that are aligned to get them to the landing page, and teams from the landing page to the sign up end thing. And then from the sign up to the key behavior. That's typically called retention and activation and loyalty. And so for us, what we've seen is that it's really helpful when our team, our behavioral science team, is aligned with one of those KPIs, those key performance indicators. When a company is very focused on increasing conversion, our team can help with that. That means some behavior change, but when we're talking in their language, it's really about kind of that funnel management. And so we have to move our language to kind of a company's how they talk about getting people through to get to the key behavior. So, and that's really what we've done, I think, quite successfully, is we're very focused on aligning with the thing that they care most about, and then doing a priority or a key behavior around that. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the main takeaways from working with tech, is that they are very data aware. they know what's going on in their funnel. Or if they don't know what's going on in their funnel, they know that they don't know what's going on in their funnel, and they have a team trying to fix it. And I think that's something that, as we work with people out of kind of the tech field, is something we kind of really instill is this really. And it aligns with behavioral science. We study what people do, not what they say. And the funnel really is very clear of what people are doing, where they're dropping off, and where they may need more support.
Okay, thank you. Matt, you've worked with Microsoft, which is a small niche company within the tech area. Do you agree, or do you share this point of view or experience based on your own experience? Did you use the same, I would say, framework or method?
Yeah, Christian and I have very different experiences. I spent most of my career working for the inside of companies. And so I tend to come often in through the product team. Microsoft was also a rather long time ago. When I was at Microsoft, product management looked very much like technical product management. Most of the product managers were engineers. And so I think they were very frustrated by what they saw as the irrationality of humans. I'll give the example of Bing, right? We ran a famous experiment called the Bing It On Challenge, where we took, people got one of 4 potential things. They got Google results in the Google brand, Bing results in the Bing brand, or Google results in the Bing brand and Bing results in the Google brand. And the winner was Bing results in the Google brand. And I think this really drove a lot of engineers pretty nuts, right? They're like, technical product managers, engineers often sort of feel like, well, people's behavior should be based on concrete, sort of logical reasons, like whatever has the best results should win. The example I sometimes use is they often reject the notion that colors make people eat M&Ms, right? They're like, no, people eat M&Ms for like taste and only for taste. And I'm like, that just turns out to be not true. And so I think it was a struggle at the time. I think tech has changed a lot over that intervening 5 to 10 year period, right? So more recently, when I've gone back to consult inside of organizations like Microsoft, Google, LinkedIn, et cetera, I think you see product managers that didn't necessarily come up through the tech track. They came up through, psychology or user research or other areas. And there's more of appreciation of, hey, humans do what they do. It doesn't really matter if we want to impose that's logic. We're not going to judge whether that's logical or illogical. And so I think things have changed considerably. To Kristen's point, there are other industries where maybe that's still lagging behind a bit, right? There are a lot of places I go where they're still extremely frustrated. Health is a good example. I think doctors are sort of often mystified where they're like, this is in a person's best interest. It will make their health better. They should clearly do it because it's in their best interest. And you're like, that just turns out to be not true. And so shaking people out of that, well, people have to be rational actors, or that like they have to be rational according to my version of rational, is the first step in a lot of organizations.
Thank you. Etienne, it's your turn. Etienne, you've worked with different kind of company, I would say, different sectors, and you've trained a lot of people, including within the BVA family, and to mention a few large FMCG company. Have you experienced similar things? And do you say that the method that you use to infuse behavioral sciences was in line with what Matt and Christine said?
Well, I experienced different universe in which I had that opportunity, and I think that there are common points to those different universes, and mostly people want to work and people want to learn regarding what they are doing. Meaning that if you want to infuse behavioral science, you have to make people work not on case study of other company and what should have you done during if you were at the place of the man who had to take that decision, but you have to bring their own challenges within the training so that they can work definitely on the challenges that they want to work. My second point regarding that is also, when you do the training about behavioral science, and this is something that is very important to me and that can resonate with what Matt just said, is that, well, I would say in a nutshell, we are human, but we don't know exactly how we, as human, are working. and we should be a little bit more aware of that. One example that always fascinates me is that when I teach about behavioral science and I ask people to apply behavioral science to their own job, the first thing they do is that they come back with story of how they apply behavioral science on their kids, on themselves, within their family, meaning that the first thing that they discover with behavioral science is how they take decisions and how they act by themselves rather than applying that to the company. And to me, this is something that is quite interesting because it means that first, we should all know how we take decision, and that's part of the irrational thing. If all the engineers were aware of how they were taking decision from themselves, maybe they won't think that people will eat M&Ms not just for the color, but for the taste.
Thank you. And another question, because you've experienced something a bit special. You are as we said, the chief behavioral officer for BVA family, and you've infused behavioral sciences within the BVA family. What was the reason why? And was this a special experience? Not emotionally because we are friends, but because it was a specific challenge.
Well, the reason why we infuse behavioral science within the BVA family is definitely because we are, just as you said at the beginning, we know that if people are aware of behavioral science and know how they take decision, how their client take decision, how cities and how consumer or everyone take decision, they will make a better job. So one of the most interesting thing within infusing behavioral science within BVA is what about thinking about how we can put behavioral science within the different market research value chain, meaning how I can put behavioral science when I do a proposal, when I build a design research, when I present result to a client, and all that kind of thing that make the value of what we are providing to our clients. And one way to do that is of course to participate to that and to help them to find that kind of thing. And the second way is to train as many people as possible within BVA, because here again, if people are aware of what it is and how they act and how they take decisions for themselves, they will be better in the job that they are doing.
Okay, thank you, Etienne. Just to summarize quickly, if we can, we've understood that, of course, dealing with the infusion of behavioral sciences is contextual, and we are also a fan of context within our, I would say, expertise. Based on your experience, whatever the sector, the persona, the tech are, and you've talked about any kind of frame or the value chain, of course, it is different within BVA and Microsoft or Google. Is there, in your view, an ideal method, or from any kind of contextual starting point, a direction or a roadmap to something which would be the ideal? And we're going to start with Matt that time, if he's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think my opinion about this has changed over the course of my career, which I view as a good thing. If you're doing the same thing you were doing 20 years ago, you're probably not doing it right. I liked what was just said about training as many people as possible and sort of democratizing behavioral science across an organization, which I don't think is something that early in my career I was as savvy about. I was very focused down into the behavioral science team as opposed to sideways into sort of the operational and business teams about where those handoffs happen, because that's really the fragile part a lot of the time. You know, it's either incorrectly understanding what the business needs, right, as it comes into the behavioral science process, or not being able to successfully hand something off from the sort of pilot to scale stage, right? Moving from behavioral science into an operational team. And so I think that democratizing behavioral science makes that gradient smoother, makes it better. You know, I also think, I remember, you don't see these so much anymore, but I remember the early internet, we had like progressive JPEGs, right? So they'd start out really blurry and then you get more data and they get less blurry. And I sort of think that behavioral science works that way all of the time, similar to the HR, you know, leader in the elevator question. You know, first I sort of have to convince you that behavior is a thing your company does. Then I have to convince you that science is better. Then we'll at least talk through a basic process. I don't start with a project inside of the company, right? I think I think that often distracts people from learning the process. And so, can we help them understand a process at a quick and light level? Then can we get them to do something right within their company? And then there's this sort of progressive process. Maybe kicking it over to Kristen, I think you see this a lot when you're working in an advisory capacity outside of a company, where you get this opportunity to sort of deepen and deepen and deepen. And that's how your relationship with the company grows, is sort of as you help them refine how they're doing it over and over and over and over and over again. It's why we have repeat engagements. It's why you and I have worked at the same companies, right, as advisors. There's this deepening of the process as it democratizes, as it gets more widespread.
Thank you, Matt. And Christine, regarding this, I would say not dilemma, but a question that you've raised, Matt, regarding this question of, I would say, BeSci for everyone or BeSci for specialists, and also building on this point regarding the ideal method, or I would say organization or method. What do you think?
I would plus one kind of building around the organization. I think one of the things I did early at Google was just create an email list with BE tidbits and sent it around and got some groundswell of folks who were interested. And then we knew that we could go into their teams and help them out in the future because they were behavioral science fans and friendlies. I would say something that has worked well for us is getting a few points on the board with a real outcome. Because if you can say, you point to something that actually worked, that drove some metric that people care about, using this process, you get a lot more social permission to kind of spread the process. And so having some, quick win, which is usually not the big thing you want to change, but is a quick win that you feel confident in. And by the way, it is risky because if it backfires, it also does the same thing that it would have done if it worked, is it decreases the momentum. So having some quick win has really given us kind of a lot of power and permission within companies to kind of spread the behavioral seed. I would say if you had to kind of pick one hammer, one process to do, just mapping, understanding the environment that people are in. We've done exercises with companies where we're like, okay, the behavior we chose was, let's say, driving a telehealth visit for a new user, and you get them to go through the flow and they're like, oh, there's no button there. And it's just the insight is understanding the process by which people have to go through to do the thing that you want them to do. And I think we forget how we just are so ingrained in it that we kind of forget to take the step back and look at the full end-to-end process. And so the basics of behavioral science, you kind of go back to basics. It's studying the environment that we live in so that we can help people change it to get to the thing that they want to get to.
Thank you. And for you, Etienne, do you share the same feelings or practices or views?
I think, I fully agree with what I've just said regarding the quick win. I think that's quite important. I think that one thing that evolved in the way that I saw those different things is the more I work with different organizations in which we try to infuse behavioral science and to have, I would say, we have behavioral scientists that are the core team. And often they rely on the people who are doing different job and different thing in order to help them to make it better. And I would say that for me, one thing that is very important right now is to try to embed the behavioral science intervention within a program, within a strategy that already exists. And I have plenty of example with that. While working with Save the Children International, for instance, in the early childhood development world, they have a lot of program that they are doing. And what is fascinating is that how they can, within those programs, try to change a little bit something that will make the program much more efficient. And that's sometimes hard because, and I often ask people to ask themselves, okay, now that I know about behavioral science, having a look at my program, what is different in my program that I would not have done without knowing behavioral science. So to me, infusing behavioral science goes through what people already do because they are in the program, that's their challenge, their current challenge, that's the strategy. And I would say that's also an answer of why infusing behavioral science within BVA and sharing with more than 300 people what behavioral science is. Probably because behavioral science is a huge part of the positioning of the BVA family.
Thank you. It's good transition to another, I would say, section of our conversation, which is about impact. I would like that we talk a bit about experimentation and return on investment. This is something that we've already talked in different sessions all along this day. And first of all, based on your different experience and know-how, you've said, Matt, that you probably would have done things differently. Are there specific things that you would do differently now based on your experience? Especially, I'm going to start with you, Etienne, because you've learned a lot, and learning is important.
Well, I think one of the things that I would have done quite differently is try to go quicker within the different projects in order to build on the momentum of a challenge that people have right now.
Okay, thank you. And shortly, to Christine first, if you wish, things you would do differently compared to what you've done at the beginning, I would say, of your role of helping big companies implementing or infusing behavioral sciences?
Yep. Only in the last couple of years have we launched we have a champion program by which we do training, but then we identify the people within and across the organizations that, as I mentioned, are already excited about behavioral science and have some opportunity to apply it to their direct problem or challenge that they're working on. And so we'll gather these people and do a very small group and long training with them where we're helping them as they're actually applying it to their problems. And so it's really almost one-on-one coaching to the people within an org who can apply it. And I think that is a pretty powerful way to get it to spread. Is you take the people who already have the momentum, you really invest resources in training and helping them, and they will naturally kind of figure out how to change the process within their team because they're in their team doing it. And so it's been a quick way for us to kind of spread. And I think we started with more of just the normal workshop model, but our champion model is quite successful these days.
Thank you. So Matt, I'm not going to go into this question for you because you've sorry for this. I will move to another one, which is really important for a lot of people, which is about return on investment or measurement of the performance of what we do. When you were in charge or with the clients that you get now, do you measure return on investment of the infusion or the investment, which is an investment for the company or the client? How, if possible? And finally, are they happy? How do you measure happiness of the client?
Yeah, I'll answer first from the internal perspective. So when I was running, behavioral science teams, chief behavioral officer at Clover Health, or for other sort of teams like that, I had very clear metrics. Sort of, projects came into us from the executive team because we helped to create a behavioral statement. We knew in advance what behavior we were trying to change and how we were going to measure that, and so we were essentially measured on our ability to effectively change that behavior. So at the end of the process, I use about a 10 to 12 week sprint. Did we come up with 1 to 3 things that we could demonstrate, were scalable worthy, and we let them be the judges of scalable worthy. So in some ways, the ROI is basically did the operational team agree to scale that, right? Agree to productionize that across the org. As an outsider, right? So now building behavioral science into organizations as an advisor, I often encourage them to use the behavioral science method to set up what their measures for ROI are going to be, right? So for example, one of the things we sort of say is, okay, we're going to do a 3-month engagement. And then the question is, 3 months later, how many of those teams have written a behavioral statement, right, for their current project? So after we're gone, are people doing the thing that we think of as behavioral science, right? Clearly identifying the behavior they want to change as an example. is that happening? And if it isn't, right, where did we go wrong? What can we do to lean in? And if it is, where else do we want to go create that? Where can we strengthen this organization? So it's doing the behaviors that tell us that they are accepting behavioral science rather than, I drove X million dollars, et cetera. That's more appropriate when you're internal, I think. But Kristen maybe may have a different way of measuring that.
Thank you to pass on, Christian.
Yeah, I think we're usually brought on to do like for many projects, like a point project where we're actually trying to move the metric. And so some of it is, did we move the metric? And that's kind of a very clear yes or no. But I think kind of to Matt's point, it's like, did we launch something? Even if, a lot of times we can't do controlled tests or A/B tests. And so it's, are we getting something out that is what we feel, from what insights and hypothesis that we have is measurably better. And sometimes it's not doing something. So I think a lot of times, we don't really get the counterfactual, but sometimes we recommend not to launch something they were about to launch or to hold off and say, wait. And so that's much more difficult to measure. Counterfactuals are difficult to understand. If you would have launched this, what would have happened? And so if we recommend not launching it or delaying, that's harder to see. Generally, I think our team, we get rehired a lot. And so for us, that's kind of like, okay, so they've found value within the organization for this, and they're asking us to do more and different work across the org. And so that's, from like client satisfaction, that's an easy one. But I think some of it is the real, like, did we move the behavior that we're hoping to move?
Thank you.
Can I just double click? Because I love Kristen's point about
of course
the counterfactual. Just, that's a great way to start an engagement, is just to say, did you ever launch something that didn't work? Right? And what could you have done from a process orientation? What evidence would have helped you figure out that it didn't work before you launched it? Right? Before it was big and expensive. Like, what could you have done? One of the few ways we get to do counterfactual is just to look backwards in history and sort of say, like, well, what could we have done differently to do that sort of tear down work? I think that's brilliant, Kristen.
Thank you. Etienne, now, because you are representing a company where measurement is also important, what would you say on this topic of measuring, I would say, return on experience or investment?
The main point is, I would say there is two ways to measure some return on investment or different action that you are doing. And one factor that is to me very important is that it's usually very complicated in real life to concretely isolate what is about behavioral science and what is the other part of the program, since I told you that to me behavioral science should be embedded in a program. So what I mostly see is that what really interests the clients I work with is, at the end of the day, the behavior that we wanted to change. Did it change or not? And usually the kind of experiment and the kind of measurement that they are doing is much more concentrated on the behavioral change, which include both the behavioral science intervention and the program itself. And they more rarely isolate just the behavioral science component within the program. So it's quite hard to say, is the value added is only by behavioral science, rather than, it's harder to say than we managed to change the behavior, which is in fact what really interests the client that we are working with.
Thank you. So before we go into the panel conversation and some questions that arrived on the chat, as rapidly as you can, please. Think about the person that you've met initially at the beginning of the session in the elevator. They are now convinced that they would like to start behavioral science infusion into their organization. Each one of you, please, can you give me your tips or question you would like to pass to them, or where and how would you start the process? It's a long question for rapid answer, sorry. I'm going to start with Matt. Where do you start?
I think I start by helping them recognize what they've laid out as a behavioral challenge. They want people inside of their organization to behave differently. So can we use the process to actually do that in our rollout? So getting them to articulate, hey, so we use something called a behavioral statement, right? When a target audience who has limitations wants to motivation, they will behavior as measured by data. Can we fill that out for this project, right? if you rub Matt's fuzzy bald head and everybody in the company is doing behavioral science, what does that physically, literally mean for that leader that has brought us in, right? What does that look like for them? What do they have in their mind? Because, in a sort of well-begun is half-done way, we have to know what we want people to do before we can start, moving towards that, understanding the promoting, inhibiting pressures, et cetera. So I think for me, it's viewing that change management process as behavioral science.
Thank you, sir. Christine, starting point, tips.
Yeah, I think doing the kind of identifying internal champions and empowering them is, you could start with hiring headcount. Turns out it takes a really long time to get headcount and organizational influence. And so I think the fastest way is this, going to where the groundswell already is. And then kind of to Matt's point, picking the problems that are going to be most relevant for them and helping them define what is the behavior that they want to change. And so getting crystal clear on kind of how behavioral science could be applied within the organization to get those quick wins, points on the board in the beginning. I do think kind of capturing the momentum in the first year is going to be important for future funding. So looking at speed here.
Thank you. And now, Etienne, same question for you.
Well, first, I would say that speaking from behavioral science point of view and defining what kind of behavioral output you are expecting from it is very important, as just Christine said, as well as Matt. Well, I would say that if the guy is not the CEO of the company, I would ask him to find the right sponsor within the company in order to manage to build on it. And if the CEO of the company, I would tell him to find the right program with which he could start in order to embed the team to work on it.
Thank you, Etienne. So now it's the time for the session, and we have a lot of questions now. So I'm going to start with the one coming from Jean. Probably a French one, or Gian. Even a company context or targets can change. Is there an ideal method or process for success? This is something we've discussed a bit, but we have to be perhaps more clear on that. Who wants to take this? Easy question.
Can you repeat it? Sorry, is there an ideal process?
Yeah, depend. Whatever the context or targets are. Is there an ideal method or process for success?
Yeah, just quickly, a lot of behavioral science organizations have different processes. So we've got the BIT's BIT's EAST framework. Irrational Labs has our 3Bs. There's COMB. So I'd say there's a lot of ways to assess how to apply, psychology, cognitive biases to problems. We kind of go back to maybe the first thing is understanding the context and understanding the environment of decision making. And so, for our team, we do 200-page stacks outlining every single step that it takes to get to the behavior that you want to change. We have teams kind of duke it out to figure out what is that actual behavior. So how do we say uncomfortably specific about the behavior that we want to change? And it's really fun to have teams kind of almost, debate and argue about this, because it's important if you're going to, and it, by the way, makes things easier, right? So if you say, I want to get someone to eat healthy, that's a really hard challenge. If you say, I want to get someone to eat a salad at lunch, all of a sudden it becomes like a more fun design challenge. Like I could get somebody to eat a salad at lunch. Eating healthy, much more difficult. And so, but it's really hard for organizations to focus on something so specific because everyone has their own ideas of what they actually want to do in the organization, and narrowing is difficult. And so I think some of the ideal method is around, this mapping to get to this behavior that you've kind of organizationally agreed to, and then applying one of your favorite frameworks to understand what is actually going on.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I could double down on that, so I think Kristen, when we talk about processes, there's two different kinds of processes that get confused a lot, right? Like the 3Bs and COMB. COMB is a cognitive model. It's a model for how we think about how humans think, right? So I use competing pressures, right? Like there's lots of different models there. Then there are process models. The 3Bs, SIDE for us, right? SIDE, like those are process models. What are you actually physically, literally doing? And so what I would tell you is there's all of the process models roughly look the same, right? You need to define where you want to go. You have to understand why it is or is not already happening. You have to do something about that. Then you have to test it works, right? Like that's every model, no matter what you call it, right? The cognitive models could be swapped out. You could use COM-B, you could use side and use COM-B instead of competing pressures, and it would be, I think, equally effective. And so my advice to Jean is, try and differentiate what we're talking about, a process model, like what are you actually going to do, versus a cognitive model, like how are we going to think about how humans interact with their environment thoughtfully, which is a little bit of a different thing, and you can treat them independently.
Thank you, but perhaps we have time enough to take one or two questions, especially if we try to answer quickly. And more questions? No questions? I thought we had other questions.
Kristen is brilliant, and she's taught you everything you need to know.
Why do you think, Kristen, as you are brilliant, you're going to take this one. Why do you think so many companies have not yet taken the plunge? Perhaps I'm not pronouncing correctly. Plunge.
Yeah, I mean, change is hard. There's something that went on in the Bay that I think is something to study that I probably even haven't personally got into enough. But like, there was marketers, and then there's growth marketers, and this is a whole new job title that got created in the last 10 years. And it was really kind of, I think, from probably Meta, Facebook, doing something, publicizing it, and saying, we've got great results by having this growth marketer, and then the growth marketers go and talk about it. I don't think behavioral science has the same PR campaign where we are, having kind of a really cool results and really talking about it like that. A lot of times we say things like, well, it depends. And that is not as compelling as it works. And so I think our field is correct in saying it depends. That is the right answer. But it's difficult to kind of convince someone that this is something to take a bet on if we're always saying context matter, environment matters, and it does. And so, yeah, but I think the lesson from the growth marketing thing is to draft off, and I think this was said before, draft off something that's already going on in the organization. You have marketing. This is just growth marketing. And then growth marketing actually, spread out to include product. So actually the growth marketers are now in the product team. They're not on the top of the funnel doing things. And so that actually has tended to work, but we haven't had that in the behavioral science field. To be fair, in the last 10 years, we have grown a fair bit. Like when we started, Dan and I started at Google, people didn't know the word behavioral science. This was a new thing. We were teaching language. There wasn't the frameworks to help folks with. We actually developed the 3Bs while at Google because we kept telling people about all these biases around cognitive overload and present bias, and really kind of had to wrap it around into something that we weren't repeating ourselves consistently. So, back 10 years ago, we've come a long way to now. I do expect us to have more headcount for behavioral scientists in the future, but it could be slow going. And I think I talked to a couple of HR managers at one point and said, why can't I hire a behavioral science? Why is it so difficult internally? And they said, look, there's all these people competing for their own, marketing or product. Who's going to fight for the behavioral scientists who doesn't exist yet, which is, classic problem in our world of hard to fight for something that doesn't exist yet. But I do believe we will get there.
Thank you. You should have probably, and I would have more questions of other brilliant colleagues, Etienne and Matt, but we have to close now because the time is over. With a big thank you to you guys, Christine, Matt, and Etienne. Thank you for your contribution and sharing your experiences, which is really important to understand the how of infusing behavioral sciences. Thank you also to the audience. We were happy to have you with us. I hope you've listened a lot and you took a lot of insight from this session. So thank you very much, and stay tuned, as we say.